Last time, Krishna gave us a powerful image, a lotus leaf, floating in water, surrounded by it, but untouched by it. He explained that renunciation doesn't mean walking away from life. It means learning to live in the world, without allowing the world to own you. But there's a problem, a very human problem. You may understand everything Krishna is saying, and still lose your temper. You may know you shouldn't worry, and still lie awake at 2 a.m. You may promise yourself you'll meditate every morning, and 5 minutes later, your mind is planning tomorrow's meetings, replaying yesterday's argument, and wondering what someone meant by a message they sent 3 hours ago. Knowing what to do and actually being able to control your mind are two completely different things. And so, Chapter 6 asks a question that may feel surprisingly modern. What do you do when your own mind refuses to cooperate? If your mind feels impossible to control, is peace really possible? Or is inner stillness only for people who were somehow born with a calm mind? Arjuna is about to ask Krishna exactly that. Krishna begins Chapter 6 by challenging an idea we often have about spirituality. We imagine the spiritual person as someone who has walked away from everything. No responsibilities, no ambitions, no distractions, just silence and meditation. But Krishna says that's not true. In verse 6.1, he explains that the real renunciate is not someone who simply gives up activity. It is someone who performs their duty without becoming dependent on the results. That's a very different idea. You can have a career, a family, responsibilities, ambitions. You can live a completely ordinary life and still practice renunciation. Because the question isn't, what have you given up? The real question is, what are you still desperately holding on to? Then Krishna gives us a practical roadmap. For the person who is beginning the journey toward meditation, action is the path. First, you practice, you show up, you build discipline, you do the work even when you don't feel like doing it. And gradually, stillness begins to grow. You don't start with a perfectly peaceful mind. You train your way toward one. Then Krishna delivers one of the most powerful teachings in the entire Gita. Elevate yourself through your own mind. Do not allow yourself to fall. And then comes the line that stops you. The mind alone is the friend of the self, and the mind alone is its enemy. Think about that. The same mind that can give you courage can fill you with fear. The same mind that can help you focus can convince you to procrastinate. The same mind that tells you, you can do this, can suddenly whisper, you're not good enough. So which one is it? Friend or enemy? Krishna says, it depends on whether you have trained it. When the mind is disciplined, it becomes your greatest ally. When it is uncontrolled, it can become your greatest obstacle. And this doesn't mean blaming yourself for every thought you have. It means understanding that your mind is trainable. You are not required to believe every thought that appears inside your head. A thought can arise without becoming a command. And when the mind becomes steady, Krishna says something remarkable happens. Heat and cold, pleasure and pain, praise and criticism, honor and dishonor, they may still exist, but they no longer throw you completely off balance. That's not becoming emotionless. It's becoming unshakable. And now, something fascinating happens. Krishna stops speaking only in philosophy and starts talking about the practical details of meditation. Where should you sit? How should you sit? How should you hold your body? What should you do with your eyes? He describes a clean, steady place to sit. Not too high, not too low. The body upright, head and neck steady, the senses controlled, the gaze focused, the mind turned inward. Why does Krishna get so specific? Because transformation doesn't happen through vague intentions. Think about it. How often have you told yourself, "I'll start tomorrow"? Tomorrow becomes Monday. Monday becomes next week. And next week becomes someday. Krishna's approach is different. Create a place, create a time, create a practice, make it repeatable. You don't need a mountain cave. You need consistency. Even 10 quiet minutes in the same place every day can become a doorway into stillness. And Krishna adds another important ingredient: serenity. You cannot force deep focus onto a mind that is constantly in panic. First, settle the ground. Then, build the focus. Then comes another surprisingly practical teaching. Krishna says, yoga is not for the person who eats too much, or eats too little, who sleeps too much, or hardly sleeps at all, who works endlessly, or avoids work completely. Instead, he recommends moderation. And this may be one of the most practical lessons in the entire chapter, because many of us live at extremes. We work until we're exhausted, then collapse. We follow a strict routine for 5 days, then abandon it completely. We try to change everything overnight, and eventually change nothing. Krishna's answer is simpler. Steady rhythms create steady minds. Eat reasonably, sleep properly, work, rest, move, recover. You don't need a perfect life. You need a sustainable one. And then Krishna gives us one of the most beautiful images in the Bhagwad Gita. Imagine a small lamp in a completely windless room. The flame doesn't fight. It doesn't struggle. It simply stands, steady, clear, undisturbed. Krishna says, this is what the disciplined mind becomes. Now imagine that same flame outside, in a storm. Every gust bends it. Every movement distorts it. The flame hasn't changed, the environment has. And perhaps that's the real problem with our minds. Every notification, every opinion, every comparison, every fear, every unfinished conversation, every desire, every memory, another gust, and another, and another. So maybe the goal isn't to somehow create a completely different mind. Maybe the goal is to create moments in your life where the wind finally becomes quiet. A few minutes without your phone, a walk without headphones, a morning without immediately checking messages, a meditation, a moment of silence, a place where you don't have to perform for anyone. Because when the wind settles, you finally see the flame clearly. Krishna says that when the mind becomes still through practice, a person experiences a deeper happiness, one that doesn't depend entirely on the senses. And then he gives us a remarkable definition of yoga: the severance of our connection with pain. Pain may still exist, difficulties may still come, but you no longer become completely fused with them. You experience pain without becoming only your pain. And after hearing all of this, Arjuna finally says, Krishna, how? He essentially tells him, this sounds beautiful, but have you met my mind? It's restless, turbulent, powerful, obstinate. Trying to control it feels like trying to control the wind. And honestly, who among us hasn't felt this? You sit down to meditate, you close your eyes, and suddenly, you remember something embarrassing from 2014. You start thinking about dinner, then work, then money, then your phone, then someone else's life. And before you know it, 20 minutes have passed. Arjuna isn't failing here. He's being honest. He's asking the question every imperfect human being eventually asks. What if my mind is simply too difficult to control? And Krishna's answer is incredibly reassuring. He doesn't say, "You're wrong." He says, "You're right." The mind is restless. It is difficult to control, but it can be trained. How? Krishna gives us two words: abhyasa, practice, and vairagya, detachment. Practice means returning again, and again, and again. Detachment means gradually loosening your grip on the things you desperately want to control. Not once, not perfectly, but consistently. That's the secret. Not one heroic burst of willpower. 1,000 small returns. Every time your mind wanders, you return. Every time you lose your temper, you notice. Every time you fall back into an old habit, you begin again. The wind may not stop immediately, but you can learn how to stand in it. And then Arjuna asks an even more important question. What happens if I try and fail? What if I begin the journey sincerely, but never reach perfection? What if I meditate for a while, then stop? What if I become disciplined, then lose it? What if I keep trying to become a better version of myself and keep falling short? Was all that effort wasted? Krishna's answer may be one of the most comforting promises in the entire Gita. There is no destruction for such a person. And then, one who does good never comes to an unfortunate end. In Krishna's teaching, sincere spiritual effort is not erased. Even someone who falls short continues carrying that progress forward. But even if you don't interpret the teaching through rebirth, the message still lands with extraordinary force. Your effort counts. The meditation you stopped, but eventually returned to. The anger you're still learning to control. The habit you keep trying to rebuild. The discipline that isn't perfect yet. None of it disappears. You are not starting from zero every time you stumble. Every attempt leaves something behind. Every return makes you a little more aware, a little more disciplined, a little more capable of choosing instead of reacting. So maybe you haven't failed. Maybe you're still practicing. And that brings us back to where this journey began. Kurukshetra. At first, Arjuna thought his greatest problem was outside him. The armies, the people, the consequences, the battle. But 6 chapters later, we begin to see something deeper. The battlefield outside him is only part of the story. There is another battlefield, inside. The battlefield between fear and courage, attachment and wisdom, reaction and awareness, an uncontrolled mind and a trained one. And Krishna's message is remarkably simple. You don't have to become someone else. You don't have to escape your life. You don't have to wait until you're perfect. Start where you are. Create a little stillness. Practice. Return. Moderate your life. Let go of what you cannot control. And when you fall, begin again. And finally, Krishna tells us who he considers the greatest yogi. Not necessarily the person who has abandoned everything. Not the person who never struggles. Not the person whose mind never wanders. But the one who remains connected to him with faith and devotion. The one who keeps returning again and again and again. Think about Arjuna. At the beginning of the Gita, he couldn't even lift his bow. Now, 6 chapters later, the battlefield hasn't disappeared. His responsibilities haven't disappeared. The war hasn't disappeared. But something inside him has begun to change. And perhaps that's what Krishna has been teaching us all along. Spiritual growth doesn't always change the world around you. Sometimes, it changes the person standing in the middle of it. The storm may still be there. The responsibilities may still be there. The uncertainty may still be there. But the flame inside you can become steadier. So the next time your mind feels impossible to control, Remember Arjuna? He called it the wind. And Krishna never promised to make the wind disappear. He simply taught him how to become steady within it. This is the lesson of chapter 6. Your mind is not your destiny. It is your instrument. And with practice, even the wildest wind can become quieter. Until next time, Jai Shri Krishna.